When you watch this movie, you can actually feel the increased production value from the first one. And that's not shitting on the first one. What I like is that while you can tell that the budget got bigger, it's also not bloated with nonsense. It's kind of like they made the first movie over again and just spent money on areas they felt could have been done better with more money. Even the Home Alone style Shop of Horrors was done again, but bigger and better. Welcome back to The Rank. I'm John, and today we're going to be ranking Nobody 2, starring Bob Odenkirk, with a story by Derek Kolstad, who also wrote it, with Aaron Rabin, and directed by Timo Giganto. Now, if you're enjoying these rankings, or you just like the idea of getting a review of an action movie based on it being an action movie, please consider subscribing and or following. Like the episode, comment. You can email us questions, suggestions, whatever, to info@therankpodcast.com. And if you super duper like it, please consider becoming a patron at our Patreon site at patreon.com/therankpodcast. Now, just for any of you out there who are first-time watchers or listeners, just to give you a brief rundown of what the show layout is. First, we start off with some interesting facts or tidbits that we found out about the movie, which are called the Potent Notables. And then we do the movie overview, where we talk about basically the movie in general. And then I do the rank, the namesake of the show, where I rank the movie in 10 categories on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best, all to figure out what are the best action movies of all time. Sort of genre-based movie reviewing and ranking, as opposed to reviewing it based on what critics think it should be. So again, the idea here is to rank the movie based on it being an action movie, so I rank it against categories that fit in action movie mold, like action sequences, or hero appeal, or villain appeal, or the final showdown, right? But it gets ranked along with other action movies, of which Nobody and Nobody 2 will be the 65th and 66th action movies that I've ranked. Now, we start every episode with the Potent Notables, so let's go there now.
Potent Notables.
So as always, the Potent Notables start with the box office info. Nobody 2 came out this weekend. I'm recording this Sunday night, so I only have the estimated numbers at this point. And the estimated numbers have the opening weekend domestically at $9.3 million and internationally at $4.9 million, for a grand total worldwide of $14.2 million. And this was against a budget of around $32 million. Now, I have to say, those are disappointing numbers. I'm sure that Universal is disappointed by those numbers. And I'll be honest, I'm a little bit surprised that it didn't do better. But that's where we are. Now, I do have good news for you if you've enjoyed the first 2 installments of Nobody. Bob Odenkirk says he wants to make more. Quote, "I think there's 4 films. Hey, look, you saw the second movie. You see what happens. The kids get 4 years older. We shot the first film 4 years ago. Same 2 kids play my kids in the movie. Paisley Catarath and Gage Monroe, great actors. And I like the idea that we see everybody grow up and we see them go through different stages of life, and a marriage go through different stages too." So that's the quote. Now, so assuming this one does end up doing well, be on the lookout for more Nobody. I guess what will really be the tell is how much of a dip it takes after its first weekend. If it dips 50% or more, I think it's probably unlikely that we're going to see sequels. If it dips less than 50%, if we can get it even to like 48, 49%, I think it could hang on for long enough that it'll make its money back and be profitable enough for us to see another Nobody. Now, it seems like they've chosen some interesting directors for the first 2 movies. Russian for the first one, then Indonesian for this one. This is Timo Giganto's American directorial debut. Giganto is best known for his ultra-violent Indonesian action films like Headshot, The Night Comes For Us, and The Shadow. That's not the biggest Potent Notable, but I thought it was interesting that it was his first American movie. While the first movie was meant to be grounded and relatable by being about the 2 break-ins that Odenkirk experienced himself, in this one he decided to make it about the work-heavy culture in America. Quote, "For me, what mattered in the second movie was what's something that a couple could relate to as a tension in their life. One of the big ones in America, I don't know if it's around the world, is the inability to take a fucking break and not work constantly or worry about our jobs. I think it's a relatable thing. People are very driven in our country. It's a great thing, but you also have to give yourself a fucking break. And Hutch just can't do it. Most people can't do it. I've struggled to do it myself." End quote. So that's his quote. I've also struggled to do it. So I think it is a pretty relatable topic. Now, the final Potent Notable here, Odenkirk wanted to do fight scenes like Jackie Chan. Apparently he watched Police Story with his kids. Quote, that movie meant a lot to me, the first Police Story. What Jackie offers, especially in those early films, was something I wanted to come close to replicating as possibly as I could. So for those of you out there who have seen it, I'm curious your thoughts. Comments below. Did he capture Jackie's magic of those Police Story movies? So I haven't seen all the Police Story movies with Jackie Chan. I have seen Jackie Chan movies. I've seen Police Story 4 randomly. I think that was called First Strike. And you know, Jackie's fight sequences and action scenes and everything are amazing, right? I mean, it's what he became a star for. So I don't know if Bob was able to really capture that or not, but it's pretty damn good, the action sequences. So yeah, anyway, I'm curious to hear what you guys think. But let's dive into the movie here. Let's go to the movie overview. So the pandemic-affected first movie made just enough money to warrant a sequel. Universal thought, hell, we made money when nobody was going to the movies on a relatively low budget of $16 million. You know what we should do? Double the budget, which honestly is still a pretty modest budget for an action flick. When you watch this movie, you can actually feel the increased production value from the first one. And that's not shitting on the first one. What I like is that while you can tell that the budget got bigger, it's also not bloated with nonsense. It's kind of like they made the first movie over again and just spent money on areas they felt could have been done better with more money. Even the Home Alone style Shop of Horrors was done again, but bigger and better, which was freaking great, by the way. The other way this movie benefited from being a sequel is the main star. Bob Odenkirk, in my estimation, was better as Hutch in this one than he was in the first. I think with the first one, he had to play it too straight. He was trying to prove that he could do action and left the comedy out at times. But in this one, we were able to get a sense of his comedic abilities because he's clearly more comfortable in the role. Like, he's confident that we'll accept him as an action star. So he decided to throw some comedy in again. It definitely added some levity that the first one had in short supply. Again, not shitting on the first one. I really enjoyed the first one, which we'll find out next week. But enough with the comparisons. Let's talk about the movie itself. The filmmakers did a very effective job of building on the badassery that is Hutch, to the point where I found myself getting giddy when someone would do something that would clearly be a trigger for our hero. For instance, I can talk about this scene because it was in the trailer. There's a security guard type guy in the arcade who ends up smacking Hutch's daughter on the back of her head for no good reason. I think I audibly said, "Oh shit," in the theater when it happened. And the revenge fantasy in this situation is so visceral. As a dad, I can't even imagine how ready I would be to get into a fight if somebody hit my kid. Now, unlike Hutch, I might end up getting my ass kicked, which is why it's all the more fun and gleeful to watch Hutch immediately get revenge. As far as action movies go, this has everything you could ask for. There are railguns, crazy explosions, great fight scenes, asshole villains, badass heroes, and it has Christopher Lloyd. On top of all that, they don't waste your time. It's 90 minutes long. That's economy in storytelling and proof that you can fit a badass movie into a 90-minute window. I think you're all probably getting the idea at this point, but let's see how it ranked.
A rank.
So the rank is where I rank the movie based on 10 categories: story, acting, originality, action sequences, film coherence, hero appeal, villain appeal / hatred, supporting characters appeal, the final showdown, and my rank. I rank it on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. Now, before I dive into the rankings, if you're enjoying the episode, please leave a like down below. It really does help us out and helps the show grow. Now, the first category is story, which I gave a 4. So the story is that Hutch has turned into a sort of workaholic. The guy loves being an assassin, but he's also got a debt to pay after the events of the previous movie. Due to all this overworking, his relationship with his wife and his kids is deteriorating. So to repair it, he takes them on a summer vacation, which ends up being another adventure of revenge and badassery. That's a fun story. I was on board. So let's go to acting, which is the next category, which I gave a 4.25. We got more of Connie Nielsen and Christopher Lloyd, which was great. Bob Odenkirk was great as well. For me, the only acting downfall was Sharon Stone. I'm really sorry, Sharon. I just didn't like your take on this character as much. I didn't hate it or anything, but I think I just really wanted to like it more. There's another aspect that I think hurt it for me, but it was in my own head, so I didn't take more points off for it. I'll talk about it when we get to the coherence category. But anyway, the next category is originality, which I gave a 3.25. So part of originality with a sequel is, does it stand on its own? Like, does the viewer need to have seen a previous movie in the series to understand what's going on in this one? In this case, not really. I gave it some points for not being self-referential. There's one part where they show a scene from the first movie to make it clear what they're talking about, but that certainly wasn't egregious. That being said, it's still pretty typical action fare, but I appreciated that it moved slightly away from being a John Wick clone. So let's go to action sequences, which I gave a 4.85. These were absolutely fantastic. My only complaint on why it's not a 5 is that we got a lot of that herky-jerky camera movement, which I understand is designed to make the audience feel like they're in the action, but for me, I just find it distracting. Am I the only one? Let me know in the comments. Like, do you like the herky-jerky style action movie type camera movements? Or do you like a more fluid style like I do? Anyway, it didn't happen a ton, so that's why it's only slightly down from a 5. Otherwise, they were inventive, creative, fun, and the fight scenes were excellently choreographed. So let's go to film coherence, which I gave a 4.5. I'm going to slip into comparison here for just a second more. In the first movie, he ends up starting the events that lead to all the action, but it's very abstract. It was removed and didn't provide the kind of purpose that it should have. In this, the events that propel the plot into motion are completely understandable. The guy laid hands on his daughter, so he kicked his ass. That fight was righteous, whereas beating up the Russian goons on the bus, while fun, wasn't as much. It felt more like bloodlust there. So high points there. Now, I alluded to this during the acting category, but I really think that instead of having Sharon Stone be the big bad, I think it could have worked better if they had gone with Colin Hanks' character Abel. Now, hear me out. What if instead of having the Sharon Stone character, we have Wyatt doing exactly what he's doing in the movie, and I'm saying it like that to try to avoid spoilers, and Abel is the jealous sheriff, wannabe crime lord who is trying to take over the organization. I just think that could have offered more catharsis, and I think it hurts the coherence enough to make it a 4.5 instead of a 5 because Sharon Stone's character feels superfluous. Let's go to hero appeal, which I gave a 4.75. Hutch grew on me on this one. I found myself really rooting for him and enjoying his methods. I also related heavily to his revenge desires. It was really well done, and if they make any more of these, I'll definitely be in line to watch them. So let's go to villain appeal / hatred, which I gave a 2.5. Lendina just didn't do it for me. However, she was definitely psychopathic enough for me to get behind rooting against her somewhat. But as stated in Coherence, I think they tried to do too much with this one. She wasn't bad, she was sometimes good even, but just not as good as it could have been in my opinion. So let's go to supporting characters appeal, which I give a 4.25. Colin Hanks was really good at being a slimy prick as Abel. Wyatt was fine. The kids were more good than bad. Harry, Hutch's brother, was fine. Becca, Hutch's wife, was really good. But Christopher Lloyd was just fantastic. Grandpa. I can't believe that guy is in his mid-80s. It's just crazy. So let's go to the final showdown, which I gave a 4.85. This was a fantastic final showdown. It was interesting that it was kind of a carbon copy of the first movie, which is certainly not a bad thing. The only thing that keeps it from being a 5 is Lendina. There just wasn't the catharsis that I would have wanted there because she just wasn't built up enough at that point. That being said, and this might be a spoiler if you don't know how action movies work, so plug your ears, I guess, at this part, but the way in which she's ultimately dispatched is freaking fantastic. All right, so let's move on to my rank. I gave the movie a 4.35. I really enjoyed it. I found myself acting like a teenager, hoping that one of the bad guy characters would do something stupid and fuck with Hutch so that he would kick their ass. That's a pretty solid freaking review for an action movie, right? So those are all the rankings. That puts the total for Nobody 2 at a 41.55, which actually ties it with The Accountant 2 and puts it in the tier Supreme Cinema. So thanks for listening and or watching. If you'd like to see a list of our action movie rankings, you can do that on our website at therankpodcast.com. Remember to subscribe, review, and comment. And please consider supporting us on our Patreon site at patreon.com/therankpodcast, where you can get access to all of our archived episodes. And if you enjoyed the episode, please leave a like. Again, it does really help us out. So, Giga Wabaman. So as always, we start the Potent Notables with the movie's financials. Oh shit, I don't actually know the movie's financials.
Or doesn't go on television unprepared.